The billionaire stared at the ragged, oil-stained piece of cloth in his hands, his fingers trembling. His face, usually a mask of cold arrogance, completely broke. Just moments earlier, he had ordered his security team to drag this homeless woman out of his sight. He called her a stain on his multi-million-dollar corporate headquarters. But now, right in front of his stunned employees, the most powerful man in the city dropped to his knees on the cold marble floor and began to weep. He looked up at the ragged woman, his voice barely a whisper as he asked, "Where did you get this?" Arthur Vance was a man who measured the value of human beings by the numbers in their bank accounts. At 45, he was the ruthless CEO of Vance Enterprises. To him, success was the only language that mattered. Weakness was a choice. And poverty? Poverty was simply laziness. It was a freezing Tuesday morning when Arthur noticed her. She was sitting near the revolving glass doors of his building, trying to shield herself from the biting wind. She wasn't begging. She held no cup for coins. Instead, she was carefully cleaning a small, worn object with a tattered, faded blue piece of cloth. Arthur's mood immediately soured. To him, her presence ruined the perfect aesthetic of his empire. He marched toward the entrance, his expensive leather shoes clicking heavily against the pavement. "Get up," Arthur commanded, his voice cutting through the morning air. "This is private property. Move along, before I have you arrested." The woman slowly looked up. Her eyes were a striking deep gray, shadowed by years of hardship, yet filled with a strange, quiet dignity. "I am sorry, sir," she said softly, her voice trembling from the cold. "I was just resting my legs. I will leave." But she wasn't moving fast enough for Arthur. He snapped his fingers, signaling the heavy-set security guard standing inside the lobby. "Clear this trash away," Arthur muttered, turning his back. The guard grabbed the woman's plastic bag, pulling it roughly. In the struggle, the woman stumbled, and the ragged blue cloth fell from her hands, landing right at Arthur's feet. Annoyed, Arthur looked down to kick the filthy rag aside. But as his eyes locked onto the fabric, his entire body froze. The rag was filthy, yes, but in the bottom corner, faded by decades of washes, was a very specific, hand-stitched embroidery of a small golden sun. Arthur's breath caught in his throat. Memories he had buried for 30 years came rushing back with the force of a tidal wave. 30 years ago, Arthur wasn't a billionaire. He was a starving, orphaned teenager sleeping on park benches, fighting a severe illness. A kind night shift nurse at a public hospital had taken pity on him. She couldn't afford to pay his medical bills, but she brought him soup from her own home, kept him warm, and gave him her own handmade blue blanket to keep him safe when he was discharged. She had stitched a golden sun in the corner, telling him, "No matter how dark your night is, the sun will always rise for you, Arthur." That blanket had kept him alive during his darkest winters. He had lost it years later in a shelter fire, but he never forgot the woman who saved him, the woman named Margaret. Arthur looked up from the rag, staring intensely into the face of the homeless woman. Through the wrinkles and the gray hair, he finally saw them, the exact same compassionate gray eyes. He stood up, completely ignoring his corporate executives watching through the glass. He took her cold, weathered hands into his own. "Margaret," he choked out. "It's me. It's Arthur, the boy from room 402. Margaret blinked, looking at the powerful billionaire. Slowly, a gentle smile broke across her face. "You grew up," she whispered. "I knew you would do great things." Margaret had lost her job years ago after an injury and slipped through the cracks of the system, left with nothing but a remnant of that old blanket to remind her of the days she could help people. Arthur didn't just give her money. He bought her a beautiful home, ensured she had the best medical care, and gave her a permanent position running a new charitable foundation under his company's name. Arthur learned that day that true value isn't built in glass towers, but in the kindness we extend to others when they have nothing. Because sometimes, the person you look down on is the very reason you are standing today.